It's frustrating when people say that if Nibiru was real, why hasn't it been in the news? Well, it has been. But the problem is that most of these people watch the 6 o'clock news, or skim through a newspaper, or look at a single news website on their way to work. Most of the 6 o'clock news programs last about 30 minutes. In that 30 minutes, you get about 4 minutes of local news, 2 minutes of international news, 4 minutes of sport, 3 minutes of weather, and then they finish off with a 2-minute feel-good news story like people riding their bikes in the park in the nude. That is about 15 minutes of so-called news. The rest of the 30 minutes is taken up by advertisements from their sponsors. Then let's not forget that 90% of all news, that is TV, radio, newspapers and internet, are all owned by 6 corporations. So they really control what you hear and see. So people think that 15 minutes of news a day means they know everything about what is going on in the world. Then they come and question me like I know nothing, yet I source about 4 hours of news per day from over 20 news agencies, most of which are independent. Astonishing. The other problem is many people expect to be spoon-fed these days. They are either too lazy or too dumbed down to search for things themselves. Instead, like spoiled children, they yell at me and others and demand we do all the work for them. But the reality is, these people have a hardwired filter built into their subconscious. They will never accept anything, no matter how much evidence you present. Unfortunately, they really are brainwashed drones, a product of TV programming, GMO foods, fluoride overdose, and not receiving enough love in their life. So really, this video is for those that are willing to accept the evidence with an open mind. For the record, many studies have proven that the more open-minded a person is, the longer and happier their lives are. The government, NASA, and their public voice, the mainstream media, will never come straight out and say a doomsday planet is headed our way, run to the hills. They will, however, reveal it to those in the know through coded speeches and disinformation news reports. Disinfo is when you take, say, 60% of the truth and mix it with 40% lies. This confuses people. It divides the population and no one can be sure which part is true. That way, when everyone sees Nibiru in the sky and demand why NASA did not warn us, NASA can say, "Oh, but we did tell you all about it. Oh, but we just got some of the data wrong." That said, there was a very open, probably a test piece to see how people would react to it, article in March 2010. It was in the NASA-published Getting Wise About Nemesis. This is the sort of article that would only be read by insiders and persistent researchers like myself. So here we have Astrobiology magazine online. It's a NASA publication. And this article, Getting Wise About Nemesis, which was by Leslie Mullen, published in March 11, 2010. So it starts with saying, a dark object may be lurking near our solar system, occasionally kicking comets in our direction. Nicknamed Nemesis, or the Death Star, this undetected object could be a red or brown dwarf star, or even a darker presence several times the mass of Jupiter. So what they're basically going on about here, we've got a paleontologist called David Rupp and Jack Sepkoski claimed that over the last 250 million years, life on Earth has faced extinction in 26 million year cycles. astronomers propose common impacts as a possible cause of these catastrophes. Well, they're correct that the dinosaur extinction was a result of Nibiru coming too close to the Earth. Then later on, of course, the flood of the Bible was another time it came a little bit too close. It goes on to say, our solar system is surrounded by a vast collection of icy bodies called the Oort cloud. If our sun were part of a binary system in which two gravitationally bound stars orbit a common centre of mass, this interaction would disturb the Oort cloud on a periodic basis, sending comets whizzing towards us. And this is exactly what I've been saying all along, that Nemesis is a dwarf star that is a binary star to our own sun. Okay, so the two actually revolve around each other. It's just that Nemesis is on a massive elliptical orbit, okay? So it actually comes into our solar system every 3,600 years, plus or minus 100 years, okay? It just goes on. That's a good picture showing next to that sun, there's a brown dwarf. Now we've got James Matess. He's Emeritus Professor of Physics at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Suspects Nemesis exists for another reason. The comets in the inner solar system seem to be mostly coming from the region of the Oort cloud, and Matisse thinks the gravitational influence of a solar companion is disrupting that part of the cloud, scattering comets in our wake. So he calculates that Nemesis is 3 to 5 times the mass of Jupiter rather than the 13 Jupiter masses or greater that some other scientists think. I actually think that Matisse is spot on. 3 to 5 times is about correct. Richard Muller of the University of California of Berkeley first suggested the Nemesis theory and even wrote a popular science book on the topic. He thinks Nemesis is a red dwarf star 1.5 light years away. Well, it's not that far, but anyway. Many scientists counter that such a wide orbit is inherently unstable. Well, they're correct. Binary star systems are common in the galaxy. It is estimated that 1/3 of the stars in the Milky Way are either binary or part of a multiple star system. Red dwarfs are also common. In fact, astronomers say they are the most common type of star in the galaxy. Brown dwarfs are also thought to be common, but there are only a few hundred known at this time because they're so difficult to see. Now, WISE is an acronym for Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer. And they go on to say, they admit, they built this surveyor, put it into orbit specifically to hunt down Nemesis and Nibiru, okay? Because they've known about this since the 1980s. We now know that. So NASA is doing all they can to try and hunt it down. They're also creating machines or spacecraft, whatever you want to call it, to try and shoot down some of these asteroids that they know are going to come. And I talk about that in one of my other video series. So there you basically have it. This is quite an extensive article. It's very in-depth. It's amazing to read it, and it's amazing to see that they're using exactly the same terminology me and other researchers are using. And it just proves that some of the best brains at NASA are onto this, right? They know all about it and they're researching it. They're doing everything they can to try and find out as much as they can, which, you know, that's reassuring. However, the powers that be at NASA don't share their scientific fervour. A true scientist investigates and questions everything. But an administrative scientist is a bean counter, and he is a yes man that just does what he's told to do. So these guys ought to be commended for their hard work, and I really think they deserve a reward and public admiration for what they're doing. Anyway, I will leave the link for this article in the description. Check it out for yourself. On the 20th of January 2016, 2 NASA scientists went off the script and announced to the world that there is a massive planet on a huge elliptical orbit that is causing all sorts of upsets in our solar system. The cat was out of the bag. Therefore, NASA's Director of Planetary Science, Jim Green, a paid liar and disinformation puppet, scrambled. He gave a response to the article, but at the same time tried desperately to play it down. Possibly in his haste, he also let slip a little secret of NASA. That is, when data comes in that they can't hide, just come up with an alternative explanation to throw people off. And that is why people always use the acronym of NASA to mean never a straight answer.
Hi, I'm Jim Green, Director of Planetary Science at NASA. Last July 14th, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft flew past Pluto, capping a half-century of exploration of our solar system. It piqued our interest about what lies beyond Pluto and what can we learn about ourselves and the origins of our solar system. The idea of a new planet is certainly an exciting one for me as a planetary scientist, and I think for all of us. The January 20th paper in the Astronomical Journal is fueling our interest in planetary exploration and stimulating a healthy debate that's part of the scientific process. I couldn't be more pleased about what's happening. You know, it's all about starting the process that could lead to an exciting result. It is not, however, the detection of a new planet. It's too early to say with certainty that there's a so-called Planet X out there. What we're really seeing is an early prediction based on modeling from limited observations. What's exciting is that, like NASA's journey to Mars or New Horizons flyby of Pluto, you will have a front row seat to see how the scientific process unfolds. Theories like this serve to stimulate ideas and conversation. They tap into our innate curiosity. It's important for us to continue to work, and we will. Anytime we have an interesting idea like this, we always apply Carl Sagan's rules for critical thinking, which include independent confirmation of the facts, looking for alternate explanations, and encouraging scientific debate. If Planet X is out there, we'll find it together. Or we'll determine an alternate explanation for the data that we've received so far. Or we'll determine an alternate explanation for the data that we've received so far. Or we'll determine an alternate explanation for the data that we've received so far.
Alternative explanation 1. Admit that there is a giant rogue planet, but say it is so far away that it poses no real threat. Make sure you never call it Nibiru. Give it a new name like Planet 9. That way, no one can Google the name and learn anything about the truth of it.
There might be a whole new planet on the other side of Pluto. It's named 2012 VP 113, jokingly dubbed Biden. Get it? Corey Powell's editor-at-large for Discovery Magazine in studio. How you doing, Corey?
VP Biden.
Right on.
There we go.
Correct on that. Two images show you. This is the arrow obviously pointing to it. But there are three dots on here. One is red, one is green, one is blue.
Right.
What's significant?
So this is the actual discovery image. Basically, two astronomers were looking one little patch of sky very, very far away, looking for exactly this kind of thing. Stars don't move. Planets or anything that's like a planet does. So this is color-coded. This is what they saw on different nights. They're looking for one thing moving. They color-coded it to show that all these stars are staying still. This thing is moving, and the way it's moving...
So this is just one...
It's one object, color-coded.
Is Pluto on this?
Pluto's in a whole different part of the sky.
So this is way out there.
This is way out there. This is more than twice as far away as Pluto.
Unbelievable. Why does this matter, Corey?
Well, there are two ways you can look at it. I think I look at it first of all as an exploration question. That we know where we are on Earth. We've mapped our planet. Our solar system is still terra incognita. It's full of surprises. This object is something that astronomers said shouldn't even be there. There's a whole other solar system beyond the planets that we know that are full of these things that are sort of planets, sort of comets. Some of them they call dwarf planets. That's what they're calling this one. What we're seeing is, we're seeing our neighborhood. We're seeing what's around us. And then the second part, we're seeing where we came from. Mm-hmm. We're seeing where we came from. Mm-hmm.
The oft-contested designation of Pluto as the 9th planet is back in the news again today. The California Institute of Technology published a study claiming they have discovered a true 9th planet beyond Pluto.
For the first time in 170 years, evidence of this 9th planet was found on the far edge of the system. Astronomers at the California Institute of Technology have not directly seen it yet, but they think it's up to 10 times bigger than Earth and 20 times farther away than Neptune.
Two scientists at Caltech say they've discovered a 9th planet in the outer corners of our solar system.
It's pretty exciting to know it's out there and waiting to be found. 2 years ago, we realized that there was something funny going on in the outer solar system.
What these orbits are showing us, they're showing us sort of a gravitational one-way sign towards the existence of an additional body.
These researchers say for the last 13 years, a handful of objects have been found by other astronomers, and all of these objects swing in the same direction.
That can't happen by chance, so we knew something funny was going on.
Many may remember Mike Brown for his role in demoting Pluto as a planet about a decade ago.
What's the evidence that it's there?
So the evidence is that we can look at objects orbiting around our solar system and figure out why their motions are the way they are, because of the gravitational influences of everything else around. So we looked at a small group of objects newly discovered and realized we couldn't actually completely understand their motion. However, if we insert into the equation about that an object about the size of this planet 9, everything then worked out perfectly. So that's what gives the suspicion that it really does exist.
They can't exactly see this thing from a telescope or anything like that. Instead, they are using data about how other objects as far out as Pluto are reacting and moving out of alignment, getting out of its way. So data like that actually suggests a heavy gravitational pull, which primarily comes from things that are qualified to be called planet. But they do have two giant telescopes on two different continents searching for the physical evidence of this thing's existence. Right now, the best that they can say is that something really, really, really big beyond Pluto exists because space rocks are moving out of the way, as well as it's causing misaligned positions among the outer planets. The orbit of other celestial bodies seem to be responding to something. What that is, nobody can actually confirm just yet.
It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim and it'd be very tough to spot with a telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper Belt, but it's not.
Right, so all those objects are out there and they have a lot of mass, and originally the scientists said, look, a planet is such a crazy idea, maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny. And they ran simulations and they tried to make that work and it didn't work. It just didn't work. There's not enough stuff out there.
So you don't see it, but you said it's all about the numbers. So two scientists are playing around with numbers and they think what?
They think, this doesn't add up. Yeah. We need to ask some other folks to take a look at this for us and tell us if we're crazy. And sure enough, that's what they did. The Caltech astronomers looked at the number and said, you know that idea about there being another planet? That's not a crazy idea. It looks like it's really possible. So now what they'll do is they'll let this information out to the rest of the astronomical community to try to help figure out what's going on, to make sure that everything's correct. And now they'll also do the observations.
And so they've already stepped forward to say they're convinced.
Well, yes, they are pretty well convinced now they need the visual evidence to back it up because, as I said, the numbers don't lie.
But the critics of this study say that it's possible that this large body is simply an ancient core, and core of a gas giant that was ejected out to the farthest reaches of the solar system thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
What does this tell us about our solar system?
Well, one thing it tells us is that we don't really understand it as well as we thought we did. And another is that it probably had a very violent beginning. This thing was probably formed much closer in and then flung out, maybe in a close encounter with Jupiter or something.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes, so the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
But Tegan and Brown are not the first to claim that they've discovered a new major planet beyond Neptune. In fact, the hunt for Planet X has been on for over a century. But every promising claim has ultimately been shut down by scientists.
Shut down by scientists.